Just like backyard barbecues or a day at the pool, the Three Rivers Festival has always been a part of our summer fun. And the festival returns July 12th to the 20th. It kicks off with the annual Three Rivers Festival Parade. Browse art in the park with local artisans. Bring the family to Children's Fest. Stroll through Junk Food Alley. And don't forget about the festival concerts at the Hoosier Lottery stage with live music from nationally renowned acts. You can buy your concert tickets or check out a schedule of events at threeriversfestival.org. Don't miss the best summer experience in Fort Wayne, the Three Rivers Festival.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, when you get that message that says this content is not available in your location, a Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want, all those services, while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package which is instantly downloadable to your device and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. And then the EPL Roundtable, hosted by Kevin DeVries, on its own EPL Roundtable feed. So just search EPL Roundtable in your podcast device. And that's out after every match week. Now, on with the show. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Friday. It is the 5th of July. And it is Euro 2024 quarter-final day. Well, half the day. Half the quarterfinals, you know what I mean. We have 2 games today in the Euros. Spain take on Germany. That one's set to kick off in about 10 minutes. And then later, it will be France versus Portugal. The teams are in: Unai Simon, Dani Carvajal, Robin Lenormand, Emerick Laporte, Marc Cucurella, Rodri, Fabian Ruiz, Pedri, Lamine Yamal, Alvaro Morata and Nico Williams. So Spain with their strongest 11. The Germans, Manuel Neuer, Joshua Kimmich at right back. David Raum keeps his place at left back over Mittelstadt. That's a bit of a surprise. Jonathan Tah comes back in. Shouldn't really be surprised with that, but I'm disappointed by it. He plays next to Antonio Rudiger. Emre Can starts in place of Robert Andrich. Emery was a late addition to the squad. It's a big ask, but I think he'll be fine. Musiala, Gundogan and Sané behind Havertz. Florian Wirtz not in the team. Should be a good game. I think this is probably the tie of the round. I think the winner of this will go on and win the tournament. I really do think that. I think these are the 2 best teams we've seen in the competition. It's a shame that they're meeting at the quarterfinal stage, but I think the winner of this goes on to win the tournament. Spain obviously ran through their group with ease and then beat Georgia 4-1. The Germans, worked through the group with pretty much ease, did draw with Switzerland, but, they were comfortable and they were already through. And then they beat Denmark 2-0. I do wonder with the Germans if the lack of a 9 hurts them in this game, because they're not going to have as much of the ball here as they've had in the previous 4 games. You'd imagine Spain have the majority of possession. And I do wonder if not having that outlet, that target man who can hold the ball up. Now, Havertz can do it, but not to the same extent as someone like Füllkrug. And Havertz wants to drop in and get involved in the build-up. And that's not really what they need here. This should be a very, very interesting game. Very much looking forward to this one. And like I say, later then we get Portugal versus France, both of whom have been very, very poor thus far. And as if UEFA wanted to just make it all the less exciting for us all, Michael Oliver will be the referee of Portugal versus France. We know both of these teams have the firepower to go out, put on a show, score a bunch of goals, and be what we expected them to be pre-tournament, which is 2 of the favourites to win it, 2 of the best teams. But due to a combination of managerial choices and poor form, neither of them have performed well. I mean, the only time Portugal looked good was against the Turks, when Turkey just decided to capitulate. Now, that's one example of looking good more than we can offer for France, who've been pretty dreadful. Now, they're getting themselves into the final third. They're getting themselves in decent positions. They just can't conjure a final ball, can't conjure a shot. 3 goals, 1 penalty, 2 own goals. That's it for them. No open play goal by a French player in this competition thus far through 4 games. Portugal, at least, we know they carry a goal threat. We know Bruno's a goal scorer. We know he can add goals from midfield. We know that they've got pace and creativity on the wings in Leao and in Bernardo Silva. The issue for them is the fella up front. He hurts them in attack. He might score, but the negative impact he makes, and he is a negative impact player and has been since he was at Juventus. And it's a long time now since he left Juventus. He's been a negative impact player. Yes, they won 2 league titles with him there. They were winning league titles for the best part of a decade before he got there. And that run of winning league titles ended with him there. He went to United, they'd finished second, he made them worse. He went to Al Nassr, they were winning the title that year. He joined and they failed to win the title. He is holding his team back. And he says he wants to play in the next World Cup. And Roberto Martinez definitely doesn't have the bottle to drop him. And it's such a shame, because this is such a talented Portuguese squad. I think a group that could potentially go and win the next World Cup. But you start looking at the players in this squad, and, for some of them, like Bruno, like Bernardo, they're in their prime now. Come the next World Cup, they might be just over the hill. So might João Palhinha. And this is their real opportunity. These are immensely talented players. If we look at between the ages of 20 and 29, so the reason I've gone with 20 is to include João Neves. Actually, João Neves is 19. So let's look at João Neves, Antonio Silva, Nuno Mendes, Giancarlo Inacio, Giancarlo Ramos, Pedro Neto, Vitinha, João Felix, Diogo Costa, Rafael Leao, Diogo Dalot, Matheus Nunes, Ruben Diaz, Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota, João Palhinha, Bernardo Silva, and Bruno Fernandes. That's an immensely gifted group. Even if you want to include Cancelo, who's 30, that's a really, really talented group of players. Young players, pre-prime players, and prime players. an even distribution across that. And yet they're beholden to a 39-year-old who plays, with the greatest respect, in a third-tier league. And yes, he scores goals there. You, listener, could go there and score a few goals. If you're a competent five-a-side player, you go and score a goal in that league. There's a reason he's not playing in Europe. It's not money. It's that nobody wants him. Nobody in Europe wants him because he doesn't help the team. If he would take a role coming off the bench, then he could help the team. And the same issue with Pepe. Look, he's still a good defender, but he's no longer an international caliber starter for a top international team. Like, you look at their team, Costa's established in goal, a back three of Silva, Diaz and Inacio would be very, very strong. Then you go, Mendes is the left wing back. You can play whoever as the right wing back. Let's just say Cancelo. In midfield, you go João Palhinha and Bernardo and Bruno as a three. One sits and two go, which you can do with a back three. And then you play Leao and Jota or Ramos as a front two. And then you've got options to change it, and you can take off. You could take off Inacio or Silva, and you could bring on Neto, and you go back three, a double pivot of Palhinha and Bernardo, Bruno in the 10. Let's just say you go Neto left side or right side and Leao left side, the same striker. Like, that's a great team. But they're being held back by these older players who, look, I get that they want to still play for the national team. But at some point, someone needs to say to them, like, you're actually hurting the team here. If you'll accept a squad role, great. But you're hurting the team in the long run. Especially Cristiano. Like, you can hide Pepe a little bit, but you can't hide Cristiano. I say this, he'll score today, but it won't change the fact that they won't win the tournament with him starting. They won't win the tournament with him starting. I remain convinced they would not have won the Euros in 2016 if he doesn't get hurt in the final. I am absolutely convinced of that. The primary reason they won that final was because he had to go off on 25 minutes. And they went and won that game without him. And improved without him. You know, you look back to that tournament, he scored against Wales in the semi-final. Wales being in the semi-final was wild. Absolutely wild. He didn't score against Portugal. He was quite poor in that game. They played Croatia in the round of 16. He did not play well. Like, he hadn't been in good form going into that final. Even in the group stage, you look back at his performances and it wasn't good. Like, it really wasn't good. He was dreadful against Iceland. He was dreadful against Austria. He scores 2 against Hungary. That was a very mediocre Hungarian team that were already through. Didn't need a result. Portugal going on to win that tournament remains one of the strangest things that's happened because they were not good and he was really, really poor for that tournament. And now, 8 years later, like, he was 31 when they won that tournament. 8 years later, he's still in the team. And he's just holding them back. We had one game in the Copa America last night. Argentina, who I have said, you know, are my favourites to win the competition. They are on track to become only the second team to win 3 international tournaments in a row. Last night, they got a big, big scare. They played Ecuador. They should have been 2-0 down in the first 16, 17 minutes. Ecuador had great opportunities. Then Argentina came back into it. They go ahead on 35 minutes. Corner comes in. Alexis McAllister flicks on the front post, and Lisandro Martinez is unmarked at the back post to head home. Ecuador had opportunities in the game. They had a penalty in the second half, which Enner Valencia missed. Kind of wrapped up a pretty dreadful tournament for him personally. But on 92 minutes, they did get a goal to equalise. Kevin Rodriguez finally found the net. Ecuador fully deserved the draw. Fully deserved the draw. No extra time in the Copa America. Straight to penalties. Up steps Messi, and he misses. Goes to the Panenka and hits the crossbar. Hits the top of the crossbar. Messi was dreadful. He clearly wasn't fit. He walked through the game. And it was tough for Argentina playing with 10 men, because he offered nothing. Now, the difference between him and Cristiano is he's been great at the last two international tournaments. He was great in the opening game. He's still capable of putting this team on his back. Last night, they had to carry him. Portugal carry Cristiano every game and have done for years. Up stepped Mena. Dibu Martinez makes a great save. Argentina 1-0 up after a penalty each. Up steps Julian Alvarez. He was never going to miss. 2-0 Argentina. Minda chance to pull one back. His penalty is saved. Again, it's a brilliant save by Dibu Martinez. Alexis McAllister steps up. You knew he was scoring. Then it was John Yeboah. He gets Ecuador finally on the board. It's 3-1 Argentina. Montiel, the hero of the 2022 World Cup penalty shootout, he steps up. And again, you felt confidence he was going to score. Then it was Jordi Caicedo, who'd had a couple of decent chances in the game and probably should have scored. He steps up. It's not a good penalty, but it finds its way into the back of the net. And then Nicolas Otamendi, who I have to say I didn't feel any confidence in, he steps up, and it's a really good penalty. To his credit, it's a really good penalty. And Argentina are through. And they will face the winner of today's quarterfinal, which is Venezuela versus Canada. These two teams have played twice before. They haven't played in 14 years. It's the first time they've played in a tournament. The other two games were friendlies. A 2-2 draw in June of 2007 and a 1-1 draw in May of 2010. I think this is going to be a fascinating game. Obviously, if you watched the group stages, Venezuela were tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Beat Ecuador, beat Jamaica, beat Venezuela, beat Mexico. Comfortable, through with 9 points. They weren't expected to get out of the group. Ecuador and Mexico were the two teams expected to get out of the group. And not only did Venezuela get out, but they got out as group winners. Really, really impressive stuff. The Canadians, they lost to Argentina, beat Peru 1-0 through a Jonathan David goal, and then drew with Chile. I've said this before, I stand by it. I think Canada have, if you were just picking the most talented players, I think the first two picks are both Canadians. I think Alphonso Davies is number 1. I think Jonathan David is number 2. And I think Ishmael Kone would be in the conversation for number 3. I do. I think he'd be in the conversation for number 3. You look at the Venezuelan squad, Aramburo's good, Yangel Herrera's good, Jose Martinez is decent, Christian Caceres is pretty good, but there's nobody there that really challenges that top three from Canada. I'd say Herrera is probably their best player, and I don't think he's quite as good as Kone is at this point. And he's certainly not as good as David, and definitely not anywhere near the level of Jonathan Davies. But as a team, I think Venezuela works so well together. I really do. I think they work brilliantly together. Now, if it comes down to, who's the better coached team, Fernando Batista is the manager of Venezuela, has been since 2023. He's not hugely experienced despite his age. He worked with the Armenian national squad at an underage level. Then he worked with the Argentina underage teams. Then he joined Venezuela as an assistant to Jose Peckerman. And then he became manager in his own right. The Canadians are managed by Jesse Marsh. Neither of them have been in the job long. Marsh only took over this year in May. So he had no real time to get himself up to speed with this team. No real time to familiarise himself with this team. Little bit of an odd decision for him, I think, to take this job just at this point. But I'm sure he's a good coach. We know that. I'm sure he's confident in his own ability. But it just seems like a strange one. Because I think there was definitely clubs that were looking at him. Like, you had Biello in charge. You could have just rolled it out with him. I know it hadn't gone brilliantly. 2 wins, 2 defeats from his 4 games as the interim coach. John Herdman was the manager for 5 years there, and he's now manager of Toronto FC. He's had quite a unique path in football, but just a bit of an odd one for Marsh. The timing was odd, and odd that he would rule himself out of club jobs this summer when he definitely would have gotten offers. Maybe he just wanted to move back to North America. It could be something as simple as that. And look, there's a lot of exciting talent in the Canadian ranks. So if it's something he wants to do, fair play to him. We'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll have a bit of a waffle. I'll see you after this.
Hey, babe, your Instacart order's here.
Yes, it's my supplies from the Home Depot.
You can get the Home Depot delivered through Instacart?
Yeah, I can get everything I need to fix the deck delivered in as fast as an hour. Wood stain, paintbrushes, a new drill, and...
You forgot the screws, didn't you?
There. The screws are on the way.
Maybe throw in a couple rolls of that wallpaper I like.
One project at a time.
Download the Instacart app to shop the Home Depot and get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Right, welcome back. So we have an early blow for Spain. Pedri forced off after 8 minutes, injured in a tackle with Toni Kroos. He has been replaced by Dani Olmo. So that's an attacking change. Olmo's definitely more of a forward player. Pedri more of a midfielder, but they will play that he will play that attacking midfield role. And Dani Olmo's a really good player who probably would have been a starter had he not come into the tournament carrying an injury. Right, yesterday we talked Spurs. Today we're going to talk West Ham. They had a curious season under David Moyes, one that overall was quite successful. They didn't win anything. They'd won the Europa Conference League the season before, but they'd finished in 14th. They sold Declan Rice. That was the big sale for them. They also sold Scamacca, Vlasic, Masuaka. They released a bunch of players, including Lanzini. And in came Edson Alvarez, James Ward-Prowse, Konstantinos Mavropoulos, and Mohamed Kudus, the most exciting of them all. In the FA Cup, they drew Bristol City. They drew at home in the first game, and in the replay, they lost. And a defeat to a lower league team is very disappointing in the Cup. In the EFL Cup, they knocked out Lincoln City away, a 1-0 win in the third round. In the fourth round, they knocked out Arsenal, a Ben White own goal, Mohamed Kudus and Jared Bowen scoring. And then they got walloped at Anfield, losing 5-1 to the eventual winners. Liverpool, Szoboszlai, 2 from Jones, Gakpo and Salah with the goals, Jared Bowen with a consolation. In Europe, they drew into Group A of the Europa League with Freiburg, Olympiacos and Baka Topola. They would win 5 of their 6 games, the only defeat coming away to Olympiacos. And Olympiacos obviously finished third in the group and went on to win the Europa Conference League, while West Ham topped the group and advanced straight through to the round of 16, where because of a glitch in the drawing mechanism for the Europa League, they drew Freiburg, who they'd already played and beaten twice. This happened in a couple of different ties where they were teams from the same group. They lost 1-0 in Freiburg in the round of 16, but then hammered them 5-0 at home in the second leg. Paqueta, Bowen, Cresswell, and 2 from Kudus. Then they played Bayer Leverkusen. They lost the first leg 2-0. They actually played quite well for 80 minutes, but Leverkusen, as they did for much of the season, found late goals, one from Hoffmann and another from Boniface. A 1-1 draw at home. Antonio had put them 1-up on 13 minutes. It felt like they were going to be able to snatch a second goal and get this thing to extra time, but a late Frimpong goal, another late Leverkusen goal, gave Bayer the win and gave Bayer the draw, rather. I meant they won the tie 3-1 on aggregate. In the league, they start well. They draw away to Bournemouth and then win 3 in a row. They beat Chelsea home, Brighton away, and Luton away. Then they lose at home to Man City. They lose away to Liverpool. That's fine. They beat Sheffield United at home. They draw at home with Newcastle. Thus far, I think they're ahead of the curve. Because I don't think many people at the start of the season would have picked them to beat Chelsea. We didn't know how bad Chelsea were going to be. And I don't think many would have picked them to go to Brighton and win as comfortably as they did. The losses to Liverpool and City were predictable. A draw at home with Newcastle, who finished top 4, was a good result. Then they lost 4-1 away to Villa. They lost 1-0 at home to Everton. And they lost 3-2 away to Brentford. The Everton result is the really disappointing one there. Losing to Villa, not an issue. Losing 4-1, that's not great. Losing away to Brentford, that's fine. The season before, they were about even in the league. I think that's okay. They beat Forest at home. They beat Burnley away. Both of those expect results. Then they drew at home with Palace, which was disappointing for them. Then they went to Tottenham and beat them 2-1, and that was their best result to that point in the season. Then they got hammered 5-0 by Fulham, which was both a shock and obviously a really poor performance and scoreline. They bounced back by beating Wolves, beating United, and then going to the Emirates and beating Arsenal 2-0. Massive win for them. They draw at home with Brighton. They draw away with Sheffield United, which is disappointing. They draw at home with Bournemouth. Bournemouth were in good form. It's fine. They lose away to United. Then they get absolutely demolished at home by Arsenal. A 6-0 defeat. Embarrassing is the only way to describe their performance on the day. They lose to Nottingham Forest in the follow-up game. Then they beat Brentford 4-2. They go to Everton and win 3-1. Then it's a really poor 2-2 draw at home to Burnley. They draw at home with Villa, that's fine. They lose away to Newcastle, that's fine. Draw at home with Spurs, that's fine. They go to Wolves and win. So we're 32 games into the season. And they're sitting in 7th. And looking like a team that's going to get European football again. Which is their stated aim. But the season just ended so poorly for them. They lost at home to Fulham. Got absolutely shellacked away to Crystal Palace. Drew at home with Liverpool, got trounced at Stamford Bridge, beat Luton 3-1, and then lost to Man City on the final day, which, again, is fine, but, like, Chelsea, Palace, Arsenal. Not saying they should have won those games or even gotten draws, but to concede, and Fulham, by the way, to concede 21 goals between those 4 games and get thumped in the way they did is really poor. And it's the defensive issues that were their problem this year. They scored 60 goals, which is pretty respectable, but they conceded 74. 74 goals. That's very, very concerning. They kept 5 clean sheets all season. Like, that's not good. That's not good at all. They conceded as they kept as many clean sheets in the Europa League and EFL Cup as they did in the entirety of the Premier League. But that's really, really poor. Fornals left mid-season. He was sold. Benrahma was loaned, and Tilo Carrere was loaned. They've all now moved on permanently. If we look at their squad and look at where the goals came from, Bowen got 20 in all competitions, 16 in the league. Kudus got 8 in the league, Souček 7, Paqueta 4, Ward-Prowse 7, Antonio 6, Zuma 3, Alvarez, Agard, Mavropanos, Cornet, Ings, Emerson, and George Earthy all got 1 each. Not enough goals from their number 9, Mikel Antonio. Bowen forced to play as the 9 for chunks of the season. They did have injuries. It's worth pointing out. There was injuries to the squad. Like Agard, for example, missed a ton of games, but he was also just left out for a ton of games. Paqueta missed 7 games in total. Kudus missed 5. Alvarez missed 7. Antonio, as he always does, missed a chunk of the season. But to concede that many goals is just really, really poor. For a David Moyes coach team, really, really poor. They won 14 and lost 14. That's just a wildly inconsistent team. Their away form was very disappointing with 10 defeats, but they did win 7 away. The bigger issue is that he won 7 at home. 8 draws. Just couldn't keep clean sheets, couldn't defend, and that's ultimately what cost them, and why they ended up finishing 9th, well behind the European places. There's good players in the squad, though. Like, there is good players in this squad. I think Areola is a very good goalkeeper. I think they need a new right back, for sure. They had Soufal and Ben Johnson last year. Johnson is now gone to Ipswich. Soufal is nearly 32. I think you've got to be looking to move on from him, or at least push him into a backup role. Centre-back, I like Mavropanos. I do like Agard, but the injuries worry me. Zuma, for me, has fallen off a cliff. We know they've got a centre-back on the way in Max Kilman, assuming that deal gets done. I think they need to get a second one and sell either Zuma or Agard. I would look to sell Zuma, but I assume it'll be Agard who leaves. I think they need a starting left-back as well. I wouldn't be a big fan of Emerson Palmieri. I don't think he defends well. And Aaron Cresswell as well passes best. In midfield, I think they need a starting midfielder to partner Edson Alvarez. You've got Bowen on the right. My assumption is Paqueta isn't going to play next season, at the very least. So Kudus becomes the 10. I think you've got to go and sign a left winger, and I think you need a striker as well. So that's basically an entirely new back four, a new midfielder, a new left winger, and a striker. Now, you're not going to do all of that in one summer, obviously, but I think that's what they need to do. Now, they have signed Luis Guilherme, the immensely talented young Brazilian, but he's 18 and he's not ready to come in and play in the Premier League. not ready by a long shot. He's not ready to start regularly for Palmeiras, but he is hugely talented. But they've got a lot of work to do this summer. Like, that's not a deep squad. It's not a big squad. I think at the moment you've got Areola, Fabianski and Fotheringham as the goalkeepers. In defence, you've got 6 senior defenders: Cresswell, Zuma, Soufal, Mavropanos, Agard and Palmieri. In midfield, you've got 6 senior midfielders. That includes Paqueta, Kudus, Max Cornet, who are attacking midfielders or wingers. And then you've got your 4 forward players, including Bowen and Guilherme. But Danny Ings probably leaves this summer. And you should be looking to move Mikel Antonio out the door. Like, they've got a lot of work to do. They've got a new manager coming in. We know that Moyes left. He says it was his decision. It sounds like it was kind of a, jump before we push sort of thing. But Julian Lopetegui has been installed, formerly of Wolves, Sevilla, briefly Real Madrid, Spain and Porto. I quite like Lopetegui, to be fair. I think he's a pretty good manager. I don't know that he's a needle mover. He did okay at Wolves in awkward circumstances. He did really well at Sevilla up until the final season when things fell apart. He never got an opportunity really at Real, but it started badly and they decided not to continue with it. And he was doing a great job with Spain until he negotiated with Real and ended up getting sacked right on the eve of the World Cup. I do think he's a decent manager. He's won the Europa League. I think the next step for West Ham is to go and try and win the Europa League, or maybe more realistic, win one of the domestic cups. But I think they are going to start chasing silverware more often, because I think that's where a club of West Ham's size and history needs to be. Not winning it every year, but competing for it every year. They're never going to win the league. Not unless they get, the Man City type of owner. But with the new league rules in the Premier League, even then it's like a 10, 15 year journey to probably been able to build a title contender. So they've got to focus on the cups and focus on those secondary European trophies. And if they could become, why couldn't they become the next Sevilla, who win the Europa League a bunch of times? There's no reason. There is no reason they couldn't do that. They are going to struggle to keep hold of top players because there'll always be bigger and better offers in the Premier League. And losing Paqueta will be, because I think it's a certainty, will be a hammer. That's a player they had planned to sell this summer for 85 million. That's 85 million that they now no longer have. You would have probably looked at 30, 35 on his replacement and then 50 to 55 on the rest. And without that, it's going to be very, very hard. Now, Kretinsky does appear willing to spend money. And like I say, they've got Kilman seemingly on the way. They're linked to a couple of other players, including Todibo. But it's going to be tough for West Ham. And I can see another season in sort of 9th to 14th ahead of them. Now, without having Europe, it should mean that they can keep players fresher. They've got less games, less travel. But there's a lot of pressure on Jared Bowen to score goals unless they add another goal scorer. They have been linked with a few. Tammy Abraham's been mentioned. I think he'd be great for them. If you add him as the 9, Bowen from the right, even if you play Kudus on the left and go Ward-Prowse as the 10, and run back Alvarez and Souček and just add depth behind them, or go and look for 1 or 2 high potential young players that you can develop behind them, that might be the way to patch it together. You don't necessarily need to go and buy another centre-back. If you get Kilman in, you can patch it together. Look, Mavropanos could take a leap next year. He's still only 26. He is a very good defender. His issue's always been consistency. He's a little bit slow on the turn. But he is smart. He does read the game well. He could be the answer there. And then maybe you just keep Zuma and Agard as the depth. But they've got to go and address those full-back positions. It's been a need for years. Even when they had Soufal and Johnson and the right back was looking good, left back was always poor. Cresswell, he was decent for a couple of seasons, but never more than that. Palmieri's decent going forward. He's a dreadful defender. They've got to address the fullback situation. They have to address it this summer. But I do like a lot of the players. Like, I think there's good players there. You know, I'll always watch Kudus. I think Alvarez is very good. Bowen's very good. Guilherme is going to be fun. Mavropanos, like I said, is a good player, but they've got to add more, and they've got to do it, you know, as quickly as they can to get them in place for Lopetegui to get to work with them, because it's going to take a lot of coaching to get this team into the top half, I think, especially losing Paqueta. One way or another, they were losing him, but if they're losing him without being able to fund a replacement, that's where the hammer blow comes. Still 0-0 in the Germany-Spain game. Antonio Rudiger has been booked, and it looks like Germany are dominating possession, but Spain, most likely using Yamal and Williams on the wing, are hitting them on the counter-attack. 6 shots to 1 so far in favour of Spain, despite Germany having 62% of the ball. That's interesting. I didn't think Spain would cede the ball like that, but seemingly they have. Right, back after the break. Right, welcome back. So, Jude Bellingham will be free to play against Switzerland, having been given a suspended 1-match ban and a fine of €30,000 for the gesture he made towards the Slovakian bench after scoring his equaliser in the 2-1 England win. He claimed it was made towards his mates in the stand. He said it was an inside joke, but FIFA seemed to have or UEFA rather seemed to have half bought that with a suspended ban. However, Mary Demirel has been given a 2-match ban for the gesture he made after scoring in their win over Austria. He made the wolf salute, which has been linked to the far-right extremist group, the Grey Wolves. And as I said the other day, he does have a track record with this type of thing. So I think that's why he's been punished. But still, 2 games. So he'll miss the game against the Netherlands. And if they get through, he'd miss the semi-final as well. That's a big blow for the Turks. I assume he will appeal. We'll see if anything comes of it. What else do we have here? Oh, transfer news. You've all heard me mention Ronnie Edwards of Peterborough multiple times. This past season, he was voted League One Young Player of the Season, and has now secured a move to Southampton. $3 million. That is a bargain price. That is a bargain price for a really promising young defender. Curious to see if they use him at right back or at centre back, but I really like that bit of business for Southampton. That's a clever one moving forward. Manchester City have signed Vivian Miedema, who is the all-time leading scorer in the Women's Super League. She left Arsenal at the end of this past season when her contract expired and has now joined Manchester City. Arsenal decided against offering her a new deal despite her scoring 125 goals in 172 appearances. Like, imagine if that happened in the men's game. Let's just say City, Erling Haaland's contract was up, and they decided not to offer him a new contract. Absolute pandemonium would break out. Manchester City and Manchester United have been cleared by UEFA to play in Europe after conflicts over multi-club ownership with Girona and Nice, respectively, were resolved. It's all very strange. The rules just seem to be made up as they go along. I don't really understand why this is happening. I don't understand why United aren't allowed to sign Todibo while City are allowed to sign Savio. Maybe it's because Troyes have been demolished to the point of oblivion by the City Football Group. And so it's seen as that's a significant move up for him. I really don't know. But it seems really unfair. Not that I'm crying too much for Manchester United. On to the gossip then. Manchester City are braced for a bid from Saudi Arabia for Ederson and will want in excess of 30 million for the Brazil international. Marseille are confident of outbeating Lazio to sign Mason Greenwood. Lazio have offered 17 million. Flamengo have initiated contact with West Ham about signing Lucas Paqueta. I don't, again, understand the logic behind this, because if he's going to be banned, he's going to be banned globally, not just in England or in Europe. So that just seems a little bit strange. Barcelona are the front runners to sign Nico Williams. Marc Cucurella is trying to convince Williams to join Chelsea. No, he's not. Don't be so foolish. He doesn't want to be at Chelsea. He's not convincing anyone else to go there. Benfica are increasingly confident they can sign João Felix, but face competition from Aston Villa. Now that is some spoofing from Peter Staunton at Football Transfers, which is just a website of spoofing. Lenny Yoro wants to move to Real Madrid, and he is waiting for the clubs to agree a deal, while Liverpool and PSG are ready to pounce if the deal collapses. There is no deal. Real don't want to pay the money, so we'll see what happens. Fulham are inquiring about the availability of Scott McTominay. Could see that one making some sense. Matty Cash looks increasingly unlikely to join AC Milan. That's always it's a weird link. Really weird link. Barcelona are keen on signing João Cancelo. Are they? Because they didn't seem to be. Juventus want to reinforce their midfield further with the signing of Town Cook Miners. Manchester United are closing in on the signing of 16-year-old Slovakian wonder kid Samuel Lasalle from Crystal Palace. Okay. Newcastle's move for Dominic Calvert-Lewin has collapsed after the Magpies were unable to sell Callum Wilson. I think his wage demands were quite high as well, Calvert-Lewin. Ajax, Nice and Rennes, as well as Olympiacos, are among a number of clubs interested in Cedric Soares, who's on a free. Brighton swoop to take advantage of Liverpool's delay in sealing a deal for Mats Wiefer. Liverpool never made any move for Mats Wiefer. Not a single move for him. And the idea that Arne Slot gave the green light is complete horseshit. He is the head coach. The decisions are not made by him. They're made by Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards. He will have input. He will not give any green lights or make any sort of decisions. Manchester United want to sell Donny van de Beek rather than lose him on a free next summer. That was 40 million well spent. Romelu Lukaku wants to reunite with Antonio Conte. This just seems like lazy journalism. Napoli have told Chelsea they're willing to lower their price of 111 million for Victor Osimhen. I highly doubt that they have. Germany defender Waldemar Anton has passed a medical at Borussia Dortmund and will join Stuttgart following Euro 2024. Has he? I know he's going there. Like, that's not in question. But has he passed a medical? Do we really believe that Julian Nagelsmann has just allowed Dortmund to walk in to the German training camp and undertake a medical? Because I don't believe that even for a second. I do, however, believe that football is very unfair. And if we look at what's happening to Stuttgart, who, remember, qualified for the Champions League, Ito gone, Anton going, Guirassy going, they're three vital parts of that team. Now, they're going to bring in big money, and hopefully quite a bit of it will be reinvested. They've already made a bunch of signings. They've brought back in Alex Nubel on loan. They have brought in Roalt from Toulouse, Sturgeon from St. Gallen, who's really good. Llewellyn, the attacking midfielder or winger from Union Berlin, and Jeff Chabot, centre-back from Cologne. He's arrived. But they're going to need a couple of big hitters to come in and replace the players they're losing. Because last season, Anton played in 31 of 34 league games. Ito played in 24 of 34 league games. He had an injury. He would have played in more. And Guirassy played in 26 and scored 25 goals. So, and they also might lose Dennis Undav, who Brighton don't seem keen on selling. So that'll be both of their primary goal scorers and both of their starting centre-backs gone, which would be devastating. Absolutely devastating for them. Now, we'll see what happens. But that's a really tough pill to swallow when a club that's been relegated twice in recent years builds something really impressive, lands themselves in the Champions League after a great bit of recruitment. Like Mittelstadt signed for 500,000. He's now a regular for Germany. Guirassy comes in for 9 million. They bring in Stiller for 5.5. And all of these players do really, really well. They bring in Luel and Nubel and Undav and Raoul. All of them were there last year on loan. They brought in Mo Dahoud on loan in January, and he played his part coming off the bench. They did really, really well to put this team together after, like I say, the season before they barely survived. They finished 16th and needed to win the playoff to stay up. The season before that, they were 15th. Season before that, they were 9th. Before that, they were in the second division. It took them a lot to get themselves back on a good footing. They finally do it. They get into the Champions League, and now their team has been harvested by, rich clubs. But it is just the way of the world. Right, folks, that's going to do me for today. It is still 0-0 in the Spain-Germany game. Germany have had now 3 shots with 2 on target, and sounds like Kai Havertz just missed a good chance. I will see you all on Monday. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.